Hey, everybody. Welcome back once again after a long hiatus to the Non-Prophets. I'm the host, Jeff D. My co-host is Jeff Jones.
Howdy.
And our producer, once again, like in the good old days, is Russell Glasser.
Hi, folks.
Our opening music today was I Predict by Sparks. And who could have predicted that our show would be back on the air? Well, not us, because we're the Non-Prophets. And we don't do that kind of thing. We are live May 10, 2003. I want to thank the Atheist Network for having us back on. And remind everyone who's listening to our show, either live today, Saturday, May 10, that you can, if you are listening to us live, you can get into the chat room at atheistnetwork.com. They still have that, right? Chat room?
I'm trying to get into it right now.
Okay.
Assume that we don't for now.
We normally... Oh, assume that we don't? They've got to still have a chat room.
Yeah.
All right, we'll talk about that in a minute after Russell confirms that, in fact, there is a chat room for you to go to. I want to thank all of those of you out there who emailed to us after we put our show on hiatus, begging and pleading for us to come back. We weren't off the air to spite anyone. We just got a little tired of doing this for free and needed to take a break. But we're back, and what you need to know though is that we're going to be every other week from now on, not every weekend, on Saturdays from 2 to 3:30. So our next show is going to be when? 24th. 24th.
Yes.
And I sent out a bunch of emails to some of you who had sent us email letting you know that we were going to be back on, so I hope a lot of you are listening live right now. And I got a response from one of those. Gordon wrote, "I'm very happy to hear that y'all are coming back on the air. I've downloaded all the shows that you have on the download page and really enjoy your show. That download page is at the Atheist Community of Austin website, atheist-community.org, right. And these shows will be going up there too. We'll cycle them through." He said he'd only discovered our program last December just before we put it on hold. Sorry about that, dude. I live in northwestern New Mexico in a very conservative part of the state, and the internet is my main way of getting up-to-date information on issues that are important to me and my family as atheists. I very much enjoy hearing the voices of fellow freethinkers and atheists, being that I haven't known very many atheists throughout my life, and it's good to hear the voices of other like-minded people for a change. Anyway, it's great to hear that y'all are coming back on the air. Thanks, Gordon. And he's an assistant professor of mathematics.
At what university did he say?
He did say, but I put a cap on how much personal information I'm willing to give out about our listeners.
I was born and raised in New Mexico. So.
Were you?
Yeah.
What part of New Mexico are you from?
Eastern New Mexico, central eastern.
Yeah.
Almost within 8 miles of the Texas border, but had
I
family
grew
up there.
Santa Fe.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I woke up in the middle of the night once in New Mexico. I stumbled out the back of a van, and there was a giant cactus. And that's my memory of New Mexico. It was very nice. All right.
I just wanted to mention to Gordon that there is an organization in Albuquerque, not a very big one, I don't think. I met one of the fellows who was in it at the Gallups American March on Washington, but I don't remember the name of it. But he might be able to do a web search and find some. I don't know how far he is from Albuquerque, but it's probably the only organization in New Mexico. He's right. New Mexico is a pretty conservative state, especially that part. It's very rural up there. So.
Northwestern, right. Okay, Russell's wandered away. You got some news you want to do? Let's jump right into it. We got a lot of catching up to do.
Yeah, not much has happened since we've been off.
Yeah, things have been pretty quiet. No massive armies flying across the world and killing each other, or
anything like that.
None of that.
Religious crusades going on.
No.
Speaking of religious crusades, let's jump right into the aftermath of the war. I have here an article that was on Reuters today about I never can pronounce that.
That's right. Go ahead.
It's a real hard time.
Reuters.
I don't know. Older people around my age will remember back in the late 70s when Jimmy Carter was president and Iran overthrew the Shah of Iran and Ayatollah Khomeini immediately returned from France, from his exile in France, and took over the country, turning it into a fundamentalist, West-hating, Shiite Muslim theocracy.
Right.
Well, just this week, and in fact in the last couple of days, a man named Ayatollah Mohammed Bakir al-Hakim has returned from Iran into Iraq. He was exiled in Iran in 1980.
Coincidentally, the same year that the Shah was overthrown, and has lived there ever since. He's supported by the Shiites of Iran. They supported him and they helped him go back in, and now he is calling for an Islamic theocracy in Iraq.
What a surprise!
Yeah, big surprise. And
but we're not gonna tolerate that, though, are we?
That's right. Because we are there to form a democracy as long as they pick the leaders that we like.
Right. Well, the problem with that is if you go with the notion of democracy that a lot of American conservatives have, which is, well, 51% of the people agree with me, so screw you. Yep. Then the Shiites ought to win because they're like 60% of the country.
Right. Yeah. And they want. I mean, the very tenet of Islam. Politically is that they want, they think that religion should trump everything.
Or if they go by the basis that the American fundamentalists believe, which is that all of our laws ultimately derive from one particular set of religious laws, the Ten Commandments, then the Muslim fundamentalists win again. Can we please have the cell phones turned off and removed from the room? Thank you. Then the religious fundamentalists over there are justified again, because if the Ten Commandments are the basis of all laws in the United States, what's wrong with the Sharia laws from the Quran being the basis of all laws in Muslim nation?
That's exactly right. There is nothing wrong with it. And
well, there's plenty wrong with it. But there's plenty wrong with it in both cases.
That's right.
It's not like it's okay in the U.S. and not okay there. If you're going to argue that is a good way to form your government, then, yeah, you want to do a news story, Russell. You can next. You're next.
I'm just saying that related to what we're talking about.
Yeah, I know.
What I find...
we had to start without you, man. You left the room. Okay.
What I find fascinating about this is that, we justified this war based on, Bush's claim.
Who's we, Kimosabe?
Well, the United States... administration,
I just want to go on the record here saying that I think the entire war against Iraq was a just completely made-up pile of shit.
Well, no need to go on the record now. You went on the record in our archives months ago saying that this is a really bad idea, I think.
Okay.
Bush justified this war by claiming that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. And now even the Bush administration is saying, well, they say we didn't lie about that, but it's just a matter of emphasis.
Bullshit. I'll tell you exactly what happened. Okay, and here I am predicting, but which I'm not supposed to do. But here, see if you find this hard to believe. Okay, Bush and a bunch of his cronies in a frickin' prayer circle in the White House, saying, we really want to attack Iraq. God, please, please, please. God, tell us in our hearts whether he's got weapons of mass destruction or not. And after they were done with their little prayer circle, they asked each other, do you feel in your heart that he's got weapons of mass destruction? And they said, yeah. And they all agreed, yeah. God told us he's got weapons of mass destruction.
Well, now...
And so they went on record and said, we know for a fact he's got weapons of mass destruction. Because these idiots believe that if you ask God for something and you come up with some conclusion after you ask God, that whatever conclusion you came up with, that's the fucking truth. They're morons.
Well, there were a variety of supposed justifications for the war,
but they were all transparently made up.
Of course, I mean,
because they couldn't come out and say we know he's got weapons of mass destruction because God told us. They couldn't come out and say that.
It wasn't until just like a couple of weeks before the war actually started that all of a sudden the drumbeat of conservatives all across the country was, don't you care about liberating the Iraqi
poor Iraqi people? Yeah. I mean, it changed from he's a danger to us. When it became time to actually go to war, and everyone knew that this war would last a matter of weeks and not months. And when we defeat him in 3 weeks, I mean, does it really look like that he's really a threat to the United States? I mean, if we can go in there and wipe him out completely,
right,
in a matter of days,
right,
he's obviously not a threat to the United States,
and
unless he had weapons of mass destruction and he was willing to sell them to terrorists.
Except that, of course, a small handful of guys with box cutters are a threat to the United States, right? But you can't stop that by conquering a nation.
That's right.
That handful of guys with box cutters, they could have lived and operated right inside the United States.
Yep.
Right? They could just as easily be Christian fundamentalists as Islamic extremists.
The same Timothy McVeigh than anybody?
They could have pulled that same shit off here in the United States, and we never could have stopped them. You can't stop crap like that.
There is ABC News had an excellent report. That
Russell's got the speaker going on the Atheist Network feed quietly in the background. I can hear myself screaming.
Actually, that's not you. That's Tom Likas.
That's Tom Likas?
We're going to be archived.
Oh.
What happened?
Just keep going.
Good grief. All right, so we're not live.
Okay, ABC News.
Well, then, never mind that whole.
No chat room.
And there's no chat room. Is there a chat room on the site? We just don't.
I checked the site.
So there's no chat room anymore.
There might be.
We'll try to get this all worked out again,
anyway.
folks. But all right, so
ABC News had an excellent article that basically they got insiders in the White House to actually admit that yes, weapons of mass destruction were never what this war was about. That actually what the war was about was that Bush and his cronies have an idea that the way to get peace in the Middle East, and I don't know if this is sincere or not, or this just may be an excuse, but they have the idea that the way to get peace in the Middle East is to go in there and take over a country and then make this paradisical, this paradise of democracy there.
Right.
And then all the other Middle Eastern countries will look at it and say, gee, we want one of those too. And suddenly it will become, just democracies will start springing up everywhere.
I have a big problem with that, and I would have a problem even if I thought they were right. The problem is that their original justification for the war, no matter how much they play the shell game of shuffling around their motives. No, wait, it's about weapons of mass destruction. No, wait, there aren't any mass destructions, but look over here, there's oppressed Iraqi people. No, wait, we're going to let Muslims come in and rule the country in Saddam's place, but it was actually about, they're connected with Al-Qaeda. No, there is no Al-Qaeda link, but...
Plus, we're not going to let those Muslims run their country.
No.
We're not going to really have democracy because we're not going to let the majority of people who are actually there decide what kind of government they want to have. Because they already had the kind of government they wanted to have, right?
Well,
the only thing preventing them from having the kind of government they wanted to have was Saddam Hussein.
But my point is, they did not want to have a democracy. If they wanted to have a democracy. Right?
Yeah, they
would have been doing something about it.
Which also, Iraq is a prime example of the ridiculousness of the National Rifle Association argument that guns in everyone's houses keeps the government from becoming a tyrannical form of government.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone in Iraq has a gun. They're all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and not just rifles and shotguns. I mean,
they're already living out the American dream.
Right,
that's so
right.
beautiful.
You got a gun in every home.
Maybe that's why they picked Iraq.
An assault rifle in every home.
We have here.
And these people still did not rise up and overthrow Saddam. Saddam was a tyrant. He was a really bad guy. I'm not sad to see him go. However, we didn't do it the right way. They should have done it, not us. Or his neighbors. I mean, why were we involved in this in the first place? We were involved in it because Bush thought that the way to bring peace to the Middle East, He says, is to go in there and make a democracy, then everyone will want them.
Yeah, I don't want it.
But the trouble, I don't really either, but the trouble with that is, even if we take him at his word and say it's true, which he's given us no reason to do, he's lied through this whole thing. The reason it is so insidious, this news is so insidious and so troubling, is that what they did is made a concerted decision that we cannot possibly get this reasoning by the American people. We cannot possibly convince them of the rationale of going to war because if we make a democracy in Iraq, all the other countries won't want one and there will be peace all over the region. We can't do that, so we have to come up with a reason that they will go to war for. And weapons of mass destruction was that reason. But so they manipulated the public, and the public willingly let themselves be manipulated. And what we come up with is a war that was unjust on every single basis, and we only had it because of some bizarre idea that the Bush administration has that is never shown to be true. It's the exact opposite of the domino theory of communism. And we went into Vietnam because we thought that if Vietnam became a communist country, all the other countries around it would fall in like dominoes to communism. Right. And we're coming in and doing the same thing with democracy. It didn't work then. No, the countries around Vietnam did not become communist. Right. And it won't work now. Even if we do make a democracy in Iraq, the rest of the countries around Iraq, they're Islamic, they're theocratic, and they're going to want to stay that way.
I'm still hung up on this whole intentional lying thing, right? I mean,
oh gosh, that's so unpatriotic.
That's right.
So what you're saying that they, even if it's true that they had the viewpoint, even if it's true that they really believed that taking over one nation in the Middle East and turning it into a beautiful democracy was the way to get Middle East peace. That they didn't think that the American people would go for that idea, and so they lied.
That's right.
And so they lied, and they lied, and they lied. And not just to the American people, of course, right? Though, of course, lying to the American people is the biggie.
Yeah.
Lying to other nations, that's called diplomacy. But lying to the American people, that's lying to the people who you are supposed to work for, right?
Right.
You know what happens if you have a job and you lie to your employer about important things like...
Ordinarily.
Yeah, ordinarily what's supposed to happen is you get fired.
The difference is that Bush lied to the Americans, he lied to the rest of the world, but the American public was the only ones gullible enough to believe him.
Right.
The rest of the world saw right through it.
And I know why. I mean, the lying to people for their own good, to manipulate them into doing what you want them to do, right?
It sounds very familiar, doesn't it?
It does sound very familiar. It sounds just like religion. That is, I mean, they've turned patriotism, this whole convergence of patriotism and religiosity in our country.
It started with 9/11.
Serves a purpose. You take all the patriotic people and you scooch them over toward the religious side, and then you play the kinds of manipulative games that churches, that religious organizations, religious institutions regularly play on their own followers to get them to fall in line and do what you want them to do.
Right. And
by lying to them. God wants you to do X. Jesus will be sad if you don't do Y.
Abortion makes
You'll burn in hell forever if you don't join our club.
Well, you've noticed that there's this trend more and more since September 11th that when somebody disagrees with the mainstream view at this point, you don't just say, I think you're wrong and here's why. You shout them down, you call them unpatriotic, and you threaten to destroy them.
Yes. We have a news story on that. You want to go straight to that news story?
Wow, I wasn't even trying.
Yeah, well,
this is from the Knoxville, Tennessee paper. Tennessee State Senator Tim Burchett was speaking at a rally for veterans a few days ago. This article is dated May 9th. And he was speaking at a rally for veterans in Chilliwack Park, Tennessee, in Knoxville. And he declared, in his own words, he was talking about people who publicly disagreed with President Bush's decision to invade Iraq. And his words is, that's treason, not patriotism. They ought to be run out of our country and not allowed back. Of course, he was speaking in Podunk, East Tennessee. No one really paid much attention to it. He's a state senator. He's not a national senator, so it's not that big of a deal. But this is just indicative, right, of the type of discourse that this country went through during the war. You can look at the Dixie Chicks. You can look at other examples of how Bill Maher, of how also Susan Sarandon and Tim. What's his last name? Tim Robbins. Yeah,
and Jeanine Garofalo. who is, of course, a babe. And the thing is, what just completely drives me nuts about this kind of thing is these people are saying, if this guy in particular, take him as an example, is saying if somebody publicly states they disagree with the president, they should leave the country. Why?
Where was that point of view during the Clinton administration?
But hang on.
No kidding.
But also, this is a country where it's not against the law to express disagreement with the president. There is nothing inappropriate in the United States about expressing disagreement with the president, and so that's why people do it. This is a country where that's okay. And if he doesn't like it, he should leave. Right? This country is a place that he doesn't like. We like it. We get to state our opinions because it's legal and accepted for us to do that.
Right.
Yeah, well, try this line of reasoning for a head exploder. Veterans fought and died for your right to say the stupid crap that you're saying. So how dare you dishonor their memory by saying the stupid crap that you're saying?
That they died so that I'd be free to say it. Right.
It's...
and that brings up the whole, supporting our troops thing. Right? Oh, how dare you not support our troops. I did not support our troops. Got into an argument with my boss about this. He is a military veteran, and I was trying to cut the troops some slack during this argument. I said, I understand people sign up for the military and then they live under a different set of rules and they're less free to decide what they want to do. If they go against the orders of their commanding officer, they get in trouble. And he my boss jumped in and said, no, that's not true. There's all kinds of rules about if you think you've been ordered to do something that's morally repugnant, you can refuse and all this. And I said, okay, fine. Now you're telling me that they do have the freedom to do that? They're not. Right? I am not seeing examples of soldiers putting their foot down saying, no, I am not invading that country that's no threat to us. That we're only going into on these flimsy, transparent excuses, right? Where we're going to kill more people during our 2-3 week long invasion than the evil dictator has killed in the last, I don't know how long, 6 months, a year, doesn't matter, right? I mean, I just didn't see the troops showing that they cared about what was really right here. I saw them following orders and doing what the hell they were told to do. Which of course, our own government went at the Iraqis preemptively and said, "Don't you burn those oil fields? We'll consider that an act of war, and we won't let you get away with saying you were just following orders." Yep. So it was our nation that first said, the fact that you're following orders doesn't make it not a crime.
Mm-hmm.
And then when our soldiers go in there and conduct this illegal war, claiming to be in there acting on a UN resolution that the UN itself did not yet want to act on, right? This made-up crap about weapons of mass destruction and all that. I think it was the responsibility of those soldiers as human beings to put their feet down and say no.
I have to say, I find it hard to believe that your boss is right, that somebody could just say, this is a stupid war, and I'm just going to walk off and not get court-martialed.
Hey, I was trying to cut the soldiers some slack. He wanted to tell me that I guess, he got confused and thought that I was criticizing the institution of the military, which, of course, I am, because I think it's horrible. But okay, fine. If you're going to tell me that horrible thing about the military isn't true and that soldiers really are free to not invade if they think that it's wrong, then I'd like to see the soldiers exercising that right.
That's not right.
And I'm not seeing it.
He's wrong. I mean, he is wrong.
Of course he's wrong.
But we have a member of my girlfriend's family is actually over there. Yeah. And I don't know what his views are on the rightness of this war, but some of the things he said in emails back home and things like that certainly make you wonder about what he thinks the reasons why they're over there actually are. But I mean, he could he could say, I'm not going to fight, but, what people don't realize what that entails in the military. That means that you can forget any kind of promotion in the future. And he's been in the military for some time, and he may make a career out of it. You can forget any kind of promotion. You can forget any kind of, you won't be treated the same. You'll be treated poorly. You'll be, and you won't ever get anywhere in that form. And, there's, as much as I dislike the way the military is used in this country, there are valid reasons for having a military. I mean, we've got to have one, unfortunately.
Sure. I mean, legitimate circumstances like when we get attacked first, like a certain...
Like we've done all the time, most of the times before. But...
We're way out of practice, folks.
But
Russell's trying his best, but we have not conducted all of our pre-show preparations the way we're supposed to. Is that going to go on, or what?
No.
But to think that a soldier has enough leeway to actually be able to say, no, I'm not going to go fight this war, and not suffer dire consequences because of it.
Well, there we go.
Ridiculous.
Okay, so then we're back to what my original argument with my boss was going to be, which is, hey, what I have for soldiers, people who aren't right now, right, since we don't have a draft, these are people who volunteered. They voluntarily gave up their own freedoms to do and say and act the way they want, right? They gave that up on purpose. When they did this stupid thing and got themselves now in danger because our evil government sent these people who stupidly volunteered to give up their own rights over there to put their lives in danger. And now I have to support the war. I have to support them because they're idiots? Well, I'm sorry. I'm just not in favor of that. I do not support our troops. When our troops do things that are wrong, I'm not in support of that. And I'm not going to feel guilty for not sending happy feelings toward our troops, as if it would stop a single bullet even if I did send happy feelings toward our troops. I pay my frickin' taxes, which buys the equipment that they use to kill people and stop from being killed. I do that. Isn't that enough? What difference does it make that I then also say, I think this is a bad war and I do not support the troops that we have over there?
Well, it depends on what you mean by supporting the troops. Frankly,
I'd just like to say that this is the reason why you have your own private microphone that I can turn down.
Sorry, folks. I'm doing my best to probably piss off some of our audience. Because I bet there are supporters of the war out there, and I understand you people. We have in our local atheist group that we're members of, we have members who are in support of the war and members who are not.
Quite a few heated arguments going on there.
Quite a few heated arguments on this point. And I think they're completely full of it. So, Jeff.
Supporting the troops, I guess I could say I supported the troops, but I was very strongly anti-war.
Well, what does that mean?
Well, I support bringing them home and not getting them killed, personally, is what I supported, or not sending them over there in the first place. The use of American lives, the loss of American lives is necessary sometimes. There are valid reasons for military actions.
There are times when I will support the troops.
There are valid reasons for military actions. And the troops they're sent to do things by politicians. And that's the way it is, and that's the way it is in a free society. The military, can't make those decisions on their own. They have to be made by politicians, in theory. Congress has completely abdicated their role in declaring
in writing,
war.
They've said, we have no say over whether we go to war anymore.
Yeah, which is one of the reasons why we're in the situation we're in now. But troops, these people join the military for whatever reason, whether it's to get an education, to have a steady job, to travel, whatever reasons they do. They join the war, or they join the military. Uh-huh. And most of them join for what they think and somewhat are noble purposes. To defend this country against aggressors. When they're sent over there, and so much, it wasn't just the troops. The majority of the people in this country were convinced by the Bush administration's lies
sure.
that this was a just war. And
the majority
of
people actually believe that we have established a link between Saddam Hussein and Al-Qaeda, who are basically enemies as far as I've heard.
65%.
So insane.
A poll taken about a month before the war said 65% of the people thought that the majority of the people, of the hijackers on board the 9/11 planes were Iraqis. And none of them were. I mean, this is the job that the Bush administration did, the propaganda job. You can't call it anything else. This information was out there, and they certainly never denied it. You never heard Bush sitting up there in the State of Union address saying, now, we know the Iraqis weren't involved in 9/11. He would make veiled references to the opposite, that somehow they were.
Right.
They supported terrorism.
He clearly said that attacking Iraq was an extension of the so-called war on terror.
Yeah.
Right.
But what he didn't tell you is that we went into Afghanistan, kicked out the Taliban, kicked out Al-Qaeda, and then left it, and now they're back there again.
And can I just ask, if in fact this administration believes that that what we need to do in the Middle East in order to have peace in the Middle East is take over a country and turn it into a democratic paradise? Didn't we already take over Afghanistan?
Yeah, why
the hell are they not doing it in Afghanistan?
Because
They've already got troops in there.
Because Afghanistan's not the Middle East. Afghanistan is Asia. And, it
Come on.
It is. And, what they needed was a country in that proximity. They wanted American troops close in Afghanistan. And, you get ridiculed for saying things like this, but it was about oil to a certain extent. I mean, today, just
Do you want to
today,
hear a sidebar about what's going on in Afghanistan right now?
Sure.
Yeah.
Just so our audience will know what we're talking about. This is a story dated April 22nd from, let's see, warlords terrorize the population with a climate of fear and religious fundamentalism. Is rising in Afghanistan 18 months after U.S. forces toppled the ruling Taliban regime, a rights watchdog said on Tuesday. Even the opening of schools and colleges for women, a widely hailed product of the collapse of the Taliban in late 2001 when U.S. troops entered the country, was also under threat, New York-based Human Rights Watch said. Religious fundamentalism is on the rise with new restrictions on freedom of expression and movement of women and girls. Gains in education are now at risk as many parents, afraid of attack by troops and other gunmen, keep their daughters out of school. Unlike the hardline Islamic Taliban, women and girls were largely restricted to their homes and were only allowed out if... Under the hardline Islamic Taliban, women and girls were largely restricted to their homes and were only allowed out if fully veiled and in the company of a male relative. Washington sent troops into Afghanistan to try to destroy the Taliban, which was accused of harboring Osama bin Laden's Al-Qaeda network. So basically, little warlords are popping up again, setting up little mini Talibans all over Afghanistan. Because we're not there stopping them.
And and why are we not there stopping them? I mean, again,
because we're in Iraq.
So Afghanistan is technically not the Middle East. I don't care. Don't you think we needed some practice in setting up a democratic paradise?
Yeah, it's not like we've ever done it before.
We didn't even try.
Yeah.
That's bullshit. That's bullshit. I just don't believe that for a second.
Well, I don't have a hard time believing that the Bush administration might have come up with this plan and actually believed it would work. I have that little confidence in the diplomatic and capabilities of the Bush administration. But what is the most troubling aspect of this, and we talked about this earlier, was the fact that they lied to the American people about it, because they knew that would never fly, and it wouldn't. The American people would not have accepted that. They would say what they've always said. Why is it us that has to do this? Why don't their neighbors get rid of Saddam? Why don't they rise up and get rid of Saddam? Why do we have to spend almost 200 American lives? Before it's all over, it'll be over 200 American lives to bring democracy to a country that obviously has never wanted democracy. Before Saddam, they weren't a democracy. No country in that region is a democracy.
I don't understand this whole invading other nations in order to spread democracy in the first place. Like, how is it any of our damn business? what kind of government other countries have.
It is our business if it happens to be true that they pose a serious threat to us, but that's never been established.
Right. The way you establish that a country poses a serious threat to you is they attack.
They're Muslim.
Right? No. If they actually attack, right?
Yeah.
Then they're a threat.
Right.
Well, that's the way we used to do it. Bush has used 9/11 to say that this isn't the way the world is anymore. If we wait for them to attack, they'll kill another 3,000 Americans. Well, it's like I've heard you say this before. It's the price of being the good guy. It's the price of being the country that is never. When we attacked Iraq, a sovereign nation without any provocation, who hadn't attacked us first, we basically joined the ranks of Hitler's Germany, Stalin's Russia, countries that moved in and attacked countries because it was politically expedient to do so.
Right? Yeah, and our aims are not that dissimilar. No.
And
basically domination of the area.
Right, and on the other hand, it's okay. It is okay when you have a nation that is a threat to its own people, that is a threat to other countries in the region, when it's just such a horrible place that something needs to be done. There is a point at which that's true. Mm-hmm. And when you can tell when that point is?
When the UN says it is. That's when the
UN says it is. Yeah. As imperfect as the UN is, that is the closest thing we have to a mechanism for coming up with a consensus between nations that some nation out there is so far out of line that something has to be done. Worked great in Bosnia.
Yeah.
Worked great in Bosnia. As screwed up as that was, as many, unnecessary, accidental, bombings and things happened in that, there was a point. And I supported our troops there. Right? Yeah. For whatever my happy vibes are worth, if somebody asked me if I was in support of our troops there, I said, yeah. Right? I'm sure I didn't stop a single bullet with my happy thoughts. But, when we're in a place where we shouldn't be, and somebody asks me, do I support our troops there? I say no. And I don't feel bad about that. Because I'm not hurting anybody. I'm telling you what my frickin' opinion is.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the scary thing about what's happening now with our stance to the UN is not that, I necessarily think that France and Russia are going to band together and come kick our ass. But basically what Bush has done
we so deserve it, though.
Well, I don't deserve it. I think Bush deserves to get his ass kicked.
Yeah, well.
I wish Bush would have accepted Saddam's duel.
What's genuinely worrying is that, Bush has basically declared that the United Nations is irrelevant. And nobody has to pay attention to what they say. And the reason that's worrying is because the UN was originally set up with the intention of preventing, we've got dozens of countries that have nuclear weapons now, and the whole point was to have some kind of forum where we could talk about not firing those nukes at people.
Uh-huh.
And if the UN is really irrelevant, then, whether it's weak or not, it was at least something.
Yeah, it was at the very least an indication of an interest in world peace.
Yeah.
Right? An interest in getting along with our neighbors.
Lip service, right. At least.
At least! And that's where you start. By having that lip service, that sends a message to the world that this is a thing worth having.
Yeah.
Starts there.
Yeah. And now what we have is an administration who has basically said that we no longer have to have the UN's approval or Congress's approval. So if the president decides a country is a threat, and not even a threat now, may potentially be a threat.
Potentially
a threat. That the president decides what countries are potential threats. The president decides to go to war. The president decides how to go to war. And the president, we have an emperor now. We don't have a president any longer.
Yeah, given the political climate, I wouldn't be surprised if we start deciding that France is a threat.
Yeah. And so, important safety tip to all of my fellow Americans. Okay? Try really, really, really hard next time to make sure that we don't get an insane lunatic for president. Try to make sure that next time we elect some guy who's got some grasp of reality and some basic human decency, right? Because that's what it's going to take now to, not have our country be the bad guys.
No.
Maybe a president like that would put things back the way they were. Maybe he'd say, it would be wrong of me to unilaterally decide, which countries are our enemies and just send our troops out there on my say-so. Particularly since the Constitution doesn't give me that power. Mm-hmm. It would be nice to have a president that would put things back.
Or even if we can't get that, at least get a Congress that has the balls to actually...
To take back their authority.
The authority that's granted them by the Constitution has never been taken away. They've given it away. It hasn't been taken away.
Yep. So there we go. What else we got? Have we talked enough about the war?
Well, I've got a couple of pieces of good news.
Sickening.
Regarding the Patriot Act, of all things.
Oh, boy. Good news about the Patriot Act?
Believe it or not.
Has it been struck down?
Not yet.
That would be good news.
I have two little pieces of news, though.
Patriot Act 2 that we should be worried about, though.
Let's see.
Well, we'll talk about that after he's done with this one.
It's no coincidence that a group of concerned Knoxvillians have made plans to present a resolution before City Council to oppose the federal USA Patriot Act just after Independence Day. The recently formed Knoxville Bill of Rights Defense Committee held its third workshop Tuesday night in an effort to educate the public on the specifics of the anti-terrorism law, which was passed by Congress 45 days after the September 11, 2001 attacks. The USA Patriot Act is a direct attack against our civil liberties, said Suzanne Farr, a speaker at the Tuesday meeting and the executive director of the Highlander Research and Education Center. More than 30 people attended the workshop at Emmanuel Presbyterian Church to share their personal concerns and fears about the act. Its broadly defined target of domestic terrorism could conceivably apply to acts of civil disobedience or include activist groups such as Greenpeace or People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, Farr said.
Or atheists.
Right.
Attendees also
internet audio shows where we say things like, gee, we shouldn't have gone and attacked Iraq.
Gee, the president is an insane lunatic.
Oh, yeah. That too.
Maybe we should start using pseudonyms on this show.
Attendees also
screw that.
discussed the expanded powers of government allowed by the law as it applies to wiretapping, search warrants, personal records, and law enforcement. Now, Barry Hargrove of the ACLU's Washington, D.C. office said 96 cities and counties have passed similar resolutions to enact a civil liberties safe zone, reflecting a widespread opposition to the law. That's what I find encouraging.
Here's what we do, Jeff. We do not need pseudonyms. What we need to do is we need to say we are not in favor of anybody actually trying to hurt the president. Right? We're not, right?
No. Of course not.
Okay, good. Because you said his ass should get kicked a little while ago.
Now,
you mean
metaphorically kicked.
You mean just, in a sort of fate kind of,
yes,
it would
karma.
be poetic justice if...
Yeah. Have you guys
Secret Service is
we do not, in fact, think that would be a good idea.
Have you guys both seen the new X-Men?
I have seen the X-Men.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you said we should have pseudonyms, it reminds me of Mystique's line. What is it?
We shouldn't have
Nightcrawler says, why don't you just wear a fake face all the time and not let anyone know you're a mutant? Right. And she says we shouldn't have to.
If we're going to use pseudonyms, then I want a cool costume also. All right? And superpowers.
I want to tell
the X-Men. Did you know, for those of you who have seen this film now, the Stryker character? I have not read the comic book in question, but I am told by a couple of different sources that the Stryker character was originally a religious figure when he first appeared in the comic book, and he was abusive toward his son, who's the weird mental guy
in the wheelchair.
And it was like a child abuse storyline about this evil fundamentalist guy being abusive toward his kids.
I can see that.
Yeah, so can I. And they implied in the movie that he had certainly been abusive toward this child.
Yeah.
In some way.
Yeah.
Well, he did like brain surgery on him.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Yeah.
to turn him in from like a mutant son with mental powers into like a
radio
robot.
transmitter.
Yeah, right.
I've got one more thing on the Patriot Act.
Huh? Well, before you do that, what is this?
Okay.
It's like Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yes.
It's this little liberal bastion, and because the article you just read is from Knoxville, the one I had earlier is from Knoxville. Lambasting the senator.
Apparently, I mean, I saw things like all of Hawaii has now said we don't. I mean, the entire Hawaii legislature says we don't support the Patriot Act because a lot of us are Asian American types, and we remember World War II. Yeah. And of course, there's several places in California.
Yeah. Austin should, but they haven't.
Right.
Let's face it, Austin is.
96 individual cities and counties. That's nothing to sneer at.
That is encouraging.
Meanwhile, in the Senate Republicans backed down today from an effort to make permanent the sweeping anti-terrorism powers in a 2001 act, clearing the way for passage of a less divisive measure that would still expand the government's ability to spy on foreign terrorist suspects in the United States. Not that encouraging.
Is that Patriot 2 that they're talking about?
Yeah. In an agreement finalized over the last week, Senator Orrin G. Hatch, and if you haven't heard of him, he's the lunatic Mormon from Utah.
Oh, yeah.
The chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee dropped his efforts to extend provisions of the 2001 legislation, the Patriot Act, whose broad powers to investigate and track terrorist suspects are scheduled to expire in 2005. They had this schedule built in, basically, but Orrin Hatch wanted to propose a new bill which would make it last forever.
Yeah. That's actually
and several Republicans actually opposed this. Yeah. In fact, I heard the best possible argument against putting the Patriot Act in forever. I heard a Republican, I read somewhere that a Republican said, we don't want the Patriot Act to last forever because what if Hillary becomes Attorney General? So any time you hear about a Republican supporting the Patriot Act, ask him, how would you like Clinton to have those powers?
Right.
By the way, I would vote in a heartbeat for Hillary for president just because if she won.
I'm not saying anything.
Oh, no, it's not.
I'm just saying they're scared of her.
Yeah, but it has nothing to do
with... The people that you disagree with might get those powers.
I understand, but the reason I would vote for Hillary for president is because I would give anything to see the look on the faces of the Republicans when Bill moved back into the White House.
They would be beside themselves.
Yep. They'd be foaming at the mouth.
Okay. Well, anybody remember a little issue called pedophilia by religious figures?
Oh, gosh.
It was mostly the Catholic Church, if you recall. With all this war and other nonsense going on, I think this issue has been largely forgotten. Have you seen anything in the news
Not much.
in the last several months? Drives me frickin' crazy.
Well, I'm sure they've got all
Why is there a Catholic Church anymore? I don't understand. The whole organization was bent toward protecting itself by protecting the individual priests that were sticking their hands down little boys' pants.
Because Americans, or because people all over the world, religious people all over the world, will forgive almost anything to keep their delusions intact.
Can I give you an example? Because here's a news story from May 2nd. This is from Australia. A Baptist church missionary who sexually interfered with young boys in the Philippines.
Interfered.
That's some weird British turn of phrase. Sexually interfered. I think molested. Right? Is the American translation. Yeah. Young boys in the Philippines. Was a sincere Christian dedicated to helping the less fortunate, a court was told today. David John Gilliard, 57, pled guilty in the NSW District Court to 12 counts of indecency against 4 boys during 4 trips to the Philippines from May 1999 to July 2001. As a missionary, Gilliard visited the Philippines working at underprivileged children's camps run by the Evangelical Fellowship Philippines Incorporated. In police facts tendered to the court, Gilliard gained the trust of the boys, all aged under 16, by offering them food, money, and clothing, setting himself up as their benefactor and guardian. Once that was established, he would sleep in their camp area, kissing and caressing them, telling them he loved them, and asking them to masturbate him to ejaculation. In sentencing, Crown Prosecutor Thomas Muir said under federal child sex tourism legislation, they got some weird laws in Australia, apparently, Gilliard could face a maximum of 12-year sentence for each victim. That's 48 years. That's pretty good. The prosecutor asked Judge David Shillington to consider sentencing Gilliard cumulatively rather than concurrently, giving the pattern of assaults over the 2-year period. Mr. Muir, that's the prosecutor, disputed claims by Gilliard's lawyer, Ross Main, that his chances of rehabilitation were high, given the support of his wife, Joan, who attended court today. Instead, Mr. Muir argued that a psychiatric diagnosis that Gilliard would have a lifelong attraction toward children, in particular prepubescent males,
by the way, I think that's Muir.
Muir, thank you. Showed his rehabilitation chances were limited. Mr. Main claimed that Gilliard had shown remorse and that he had been the victim of child sexual abuse himself. The Reverend Graham Best of Sydney's Congregational Church, of which Gilliard is now a member, told the court that Gilliard was sincere and genuine in his Christian faith and always keen to help those in need.
Oh, gee, that's a relief.
Quote, he is generally sincere in his faith and his belief in the words of the Bible, and he tried to live out those principles, but obviously he has fallen in one particular area.
You know, for a minute I was afraid that he wouldn't be committed to Christianity, but fortunately he's only molesting little boys.
What astonishes me about this is what this argument is that this reverend is trying to make is because Mr. Gilliard is a Christian in every way except the molestation of young boys, that in this trial where he is being tried for molesting small boys, he should be treated more leniently. But it doesn't matter how much of a Christian the guy is. The guy could follow all the 10 Commandments straight down the line, right? Doesn't murder, doesn't steal, doesn't covet, blah, 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 right?
Since there isn't one saying don't molest little boys.
But that aside for a moment. He could be completely innocent of all other crimes. And yet, those other crimes are not why he's in court. He is in court for molesting children. That's the issue. How is his Christianity an issue at all? At all. In any way whatsoever. But once again, here's the Christianity card being waved around as a get-out-of-jail-free card. Right? Get a lesser sentence. Oh, well, you showed that you believed in God, so it doesn't matter that you did the crime. We are going to give you a lesser sentence because at least you weren't doing those other things. What difference does that make? Okay.
As usual, it just goes to show that being a committed Christian doesn't do a damn thing for you when it comes to improving your behavior.
It doesn't matter whether it does a damn thing for you or not, right? The point is, even if it does, even if being a Christian makes you a better person, if you do a crime, the fact you didn't do some other crimes because you were a Christian is not an issue. That's just not an issue at all. Yet another example. I want to go straight into this next story. Whatever rights Laurel Clanton lost when she was sentenced to a year in the Duval County Jail, she never believed the right not to pray was one of the rights that she lost. Yet Clanton was disciplined and spent several extra weeks in jail for refusing to participate in an inmate prayer circle that was part of the jail's drug treatment program, she says, in a federal lawsuit against the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office and the agency that runs the program. Lawyers for the city of Jacksonville and River Region Human Services counter that Clanton wasn't ordered to pray, but merely had to remain in the circle while another inmate gave a closing message. Those messages were frequently prayers or religious statements. They were controlled by inmates, not the jail or River Region, and therefore don't violate the separation of church and state, they argued. The case is drawing parallels from the judge, the lawyers, and constitutional scholars to Duval County's controversial graduation prayer case that, after 8 years of legal wrangling, was upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court. Clanton was placed on house arrest in 1998 for fraudulently obtaining prescription drugs and sentenced to a year in jail in 2000 when she violated the terms of her house arrest. The judge recommended she participate in the drug program at the jail. The program is voluntary, but once enrolled, an inmate can't leave, said City Attorney Scott Makar. Clanton went willingly to the program, but balked when, at the end of each session, the inmates joined hands in a circle. That's something they left out.
Yep.
There's that's not just standing there quietly.
Yeah.
Joining hands means you're participating in the prayer.
Yep.
While one designated as the leader gave a short closing message. Nearly all the sessions were closed with the leader saying the Serenity Prayer. With the leader saying the Serenity Prayer used in 12-step programs. Though Clanton said the leader sometimes would say the Lord's Prayer. She didn't know about that aspect of the program when she signed up. When Clanton, an agnostic, objected to holding hands, that requirement was dropped, but she was told she had to remain in the circle. When she refused, a counselor filed a disciplinary report, and Clanton lost 20 days of sentence reduction time. So, there you go. Once again, if you show a willingness to participate in Christianity, you get treated better.
Or, at the very least, show a willingness to sit there and be part of it, because I read further about this case, and the people in charge were basically saying, well, she doesn't actually have to pray while she's sitting in the circle. It's the exact same argument they used against the Ninth Circuit Pledge of Allegiance rules. Right. Well, you could sit there and not say the under God. Well,
right.
That's not the point.
Or you could leave the room, they say.
Yeah.
She was willing to leave the damn room.
Yeah.
And when she wanted to do that, they docked her 20 days of sentence reduction for being unruly. Oh, I see. So when a child leaves, so shall we apply this to prayer in school now? If a child wants to leave the room while everybody else is praying, is that child being unruly?
Right.
That is they're trying to drive those children into a corner where they either participate or be singled out for punishment.
Right. And it's the drug treatment program. I mean, what was the purpose of it? Was it the purpose of it to get her off drugs, or was the purpose to get her religion? I mean, the two don't have anything to do with each other. Why, if she was completing the drug treatment program, why does the other have anything to do with it?
Right.
Besides the fact of not blindly accepting whatever your authority tells you.
What it has to do with is this pervasive attitude in our culture, and apparently in Australian culture as well, that merely being a Christian is a sign of virtue. Mm-hmm. It's a sign of conciliation. It's a sign of submission. It's a sign of willingness to improve your areas where you're having problems. Yeah. Right? Just in and of itself, automatically.
That's right.
So you either participate in the Christianity, in which case you're a good little doggy, or you don't participate in the Christianity, in which case you're singled out for punishment.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to paying unto Caesar's what is Caesar? I would think that if you don't follow the laws of society, then you're not being a good Christian. So by definition,
except that the argument is that all the laws of the United States come from the Bible, and so any laws that we have in the United States
about not molesting children,
and so any laws that we have that you can't find in the Bible, right? Or any laws that we have now which restrict the application of biblical principles are bad laws that we have to not have.
That's right.
That's the very next argument.
Speaking of virtue.
Speaking of virtue! Love this one. Go ahead.
Well, there's nothing more satisfying than when some self-righteous blowhard gets knocked off his pedestal. And there is no greater self-righteous blowhard in this country than the Prince of Virtue, Bill Bennett.
What a prick.
Who lists all these...
I've always hated that guy.
Oh, man, so have I. Who lists this huge, long list of various vices that no one should partake in.
Right.
To be a virtuous, moral person. Conveniently leaves off the one big vice that he, habitually, apparently, partakes in.
So gambling is not considered a vice?
That's right. Gambling's not a vice. Gambling's not a vice because Bill Bennett never called it a vice, apparently.
And why didn't he call it a vice, I wonder?
Well, because Bill Bennett...
Gee, I wonder.
Because Bill Bennett can afford to lose $8 million in 10 years. And therefore, since he can afford to lose it...
It's okay.
It's okay. It's not a vice. I mean, it's only a vice if you're gambling the rent money, apparently. Which leads to the question
of... So vice is not simply, morally relative. It's financially relative.
Right.
Yes.
As long as you can afford the vice, it's not a vice.
Sure. If your church can pay off and settle all those lawsuits in court,
then the pedophilia, there was nothing wrong with it. If you can afford it,
it's not a vice.
If you can pay off the parents and the kids, then
that sounds remarkably similar to if you can get away with it, it's not a crime.
Yep.
That sort of attitude.
But to see the right-wing Christians and the public right-wing Christians in this country and the conservative pundits all flock around Bill Bennett to try to justify this activity was truly a thing to revel in. $8 million. How many people? How many kids could that have insured?
And I don't know. Did he ever say that it was a virtue to be generous with your money? And
no, I don't know.
Put it to good purposes. It's unlikely that he ever said anything.
Probably
being a right-wing asshole and all.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Well, right-wing assholes say we should get the government out of our lives because then we'd all voluntarily pay charity and everyone would be happy.
Like these right-wing rich bastards don't give money to charity for the tax write-off. I mean, let's face it.
Sure, of course.
People give money. They don't give money unless it makes them money ever.
He says that gambling's not a vice, but I can't help but notice that in a police department, when they have a vice squad, that the vice squad is responsible for gambling.
But that's gambling laws.
Oh, I see. But Bennett's not all about the Bible, is he?
No, it's part of his whole shtick.
Sure. But he leans on it for validation. In certain
it's virtues, and they're opposite vices. And the things that are vices, though, I mean, you can make the same argument for a lot of the things that are vices that he makes for his gambling.
Right.
For example, recreational use of marijuana.
Right.
It doesn't hurt anybody. Recreational use of marijuana doesn't hurt anybody. It's just something but he'll make the claim that because of the drug trade, because of the violence of the drug trade, it does hurt people. Well,
there's violence in the gambling industry.
Sure, there is.
Well,
but then the argument
in the drug trade because
it's illegal. Yeah,
right.
But that's one example. Other things he considers vices are homosexuality. Yeah, who does that hurt? Except for the moral culture of the country.
Right.
What are these things?
Hurt because homosexuality is defined as a vice.
That's right, exactly. It's a vice because it's a vice because
we say so.
It's against our religion and therefore it's a vice. I mean, but gambling. All these right-wing Christians are also. I mean, I've heard Pat Robertson speak out against gambling.
Yeah,
on
but
show.
Pat Robertson was the guy with the racehorse.
Well, yeah. That's very true. But they've all rallied around Bennett. To defend him against...
That is hilarious.
Well, and the funny thing is, if he doesn't think it's really a vice, then why has he now said that he's going to quit?
Or to stop him.
Right.
What?
Probably to prove that he can. And so that'll be amusing if he in fact can't.
Yeah.
Sure will.
Yeah.
But the hypocrisy.
there really are downsides to a lot of different behaviors.
Sure.
But this has been the problem all along with defining, right and wrong on the basis of some edicts passed down from ancient times in religious texts, or made up out of whole cloth by people who are just freaked out by certain kinds of behavior, right? I mean, what? Homosexuality is bad because homophobes are creeped out by it?
Yeah.
That's why?
Yeah.
No, bullshit. Yes, I mean, with any kind of sex, there are disease issues. With any kind of interpersonal relationships, there are relationship issues. And
but the
what's
solution
the deal?
to that is to educate people about the risks, not to shake your finger at them and say, naughty.
Find actual risks and then address them. Not by saying, boy, if there's a risk, you shouldn't do the thing at all. Because if that was the case, hang gliding and parachuting would be illegal.
That's right.
Right? Those things would be illegal. People get themselves hurt on these recreational activities. If that's the basis on which we're going to make things illegal, then, boy, there's a whole bunch of stuff they're missing.
Yeah. And just basis of bad for society. Speaking of hang gliding and paragliding and all this crap, mountain climbing, rock climbing, things like that.
Come on now.
I have nothing against it.
We're equally
I like
in favor of all these things now. Don't call it crap.
But I was watching several months ago on some program, it was like a 2020 type program, about how much money the United States government has to spend every year rescuing these idiots who fall off mountains and whose parachutes don't open right or something like that, or get trapped somewhere or hurt badly, and they have to fly in helicopters and send, or they get lost somewhere. I'm not saying we should outlaw these kind of activities because I don't care. And I don't want us saying we're not going to come rescue you because I want them rescued. But, I mean, you can make the same claim that is not beneficial to society, in fact, harmful to society.
Sure.
It adds nothing. This thrill-seeking behavior adds nothing to our national society.
And I'll say something else. I mean, while even despite all the stuff I just said, for example, drug legalization is not an issue I particularly care about, right? And the reason I don't particularly care about it, and the reason I don't feel bad about not particularly caring about it, is it seems obvious to me that in an imperfect world there are going to be some recreational activities that creep out enough people that even if there's no rational basis for making them illegal, that they're going to be illegal anyway. A certain number of them always are going to be. So I completely support those people that want to fight for that issue. I'm all in favor of them. I just don't go out and campaigne for it myself.
It doesn't affect me on a day-to-day.
Any more than I would be up in arms if they suddenly made, skydiving illegal.
Yeah.
I think that's stupid.
I would say that I'm opposed to it.
I would say I'm opposed to it.
But I wouldn't march for it or anything.
Right. But
I wouldn't give a damn, really, when it comes down to it. I
completely support the people who do worry about that. They have every right to fight for their recreational activity being legal.
Yep.
Right? When it is in objective terms, it is no worse than any of the other things we already let people do to hurt themselves.
Yep. Speaking of something, I didn't print it out, but I read it on the internet this morning on a news site. I don't remember which one. But there's this thing going around in the Southwest about American Indians trying to get peyote legal for their religious ceremonies because they've been using it for years. Right. And it doesn't show, natural occurring hallucinogens don't show, real damage to like brain function like LSD or ecstasy or something like that does. Mushrooms, peyote, things like that.
I do not buy that.
Well,
not as a blanket statement. I'm sure there are naturally occurring substances out there you can damage your brain with.
Probably so, yeah.
I don't know which ones.
But the studies, what I'm saying, the studies show that they don't affect actual brain chemistry like LSD and ecstasy. They probably haven't studied it long enough.
Okay. There could be man-made things that would also not damage the brain, and there could be natural things that do damage the brain.
Yeah.
It's not just it would be a pretty strange universe we lived in, and show signs of some kind of intelligent design behind it all if all naturally occurring hallucinogens were safe, and all man-made ones weren't. That's why I don't buy that.
Well, I don't necessarily buy it either. It's really not the issue.
All right.
The issue is that they're using their religious preferences
well, of course,
to try to get these things done. And if we're going to allow Presbyterians to give wine to little kids during their once a month communions or whatever.
Do we do that?
I don't know. Yeah, I've heard.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably. I mean, I had wine at my bar mitzvah, so.
Yeah. So I mean, if we're going to allow that, technically that's illegal. It's providing alcohol to a minor.
Right.
Then if we're going to allow that, I mean, why shouldn't we allow American Indians?
Oh yeah, but what sickens me about that whole thing is why on earth should your religion make any frickin' difference?
We shouldn't have to make a special exception
that's like
for
saying,
Native Americans.
I really, 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 really like skydiving.
And
it's like,
I would really like to molest
really matters to me.
children.
Well, I mean, anybody can make that case about anything.
Yeah.
The fact that it's a religion doesn't make it any more special. You either really care about having the freedom to do this thing or you don't. Yeah. If you do, it doesn't matter that you call it religion. But once again, there's the religion card.
Yeah. But
somehow, if it's got the stamp of religion on it, it's okay to make an exception in this case because it's stamped religion.
Yeah. But by the same token, the reason why religion becomes an aspect of it is because of the First Amendment, though. I mean, that's how they're attacking the laws, is because it's denying them their First Amendment rights to freedom of religion, which has some validity to it. I mean, if we're going to allow other types of religion...
No, it doesn't. Because it's illegal to be a Satanist in the United States.
Yeah.
But if you said your religious practice was that you have to sacrifice a human being to Satan once a month, right? Or whatever schedule you Satanists have, I don't know. If you said that was your religious practice, they damn well wouldn't make it legal.
That's true.
That thing is that if you have every right to be a member of any religion you want, but if your religion does a thing that's illegal, doesn't matter that you're doing it because you're religious.
That's
it's
true.
illegal.
Well, but you can see from the Pyote example that if it's not a really bad illegal thing, then the rules can't be bent for you.
If it's not a really bad illegal thing, then they
shouldn't be illegal in the first place.
That's the whole point.
Right.
Whether
then there's
something
no rational
is
sense
legal
to
or
it be
illegal should be based on whether it is a threat to people who are not involved.
I'm just not a big fan of shooting down an irrational law with an irrational argument.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If there's something wrong with the law, shoot it down on the basis of what's actually wrong with it, please.
Well,
instead of invoking invisible supernatural boogeymen and saying, because I serve them, I should get to do the drugs.
We can see exactly why that's dangerous, because if we say, okay, well, they really want to smoke the Pyote because, and
Your
they should
Honor,
be able
I really,
to
really,
because
really
it's
wanted
religious.
to sacrifice that little boy to Lucifer.
Well, I mean, we don't even have to speculate. We can already see that there was this priest who was arguing that he should get off easy because he's a Christian.
Right, just because he's a Christian.
That's exactly the same thing going on right there.
Absolutely. Okay, what other world problems can we solve? I got this. This is sort of a follow-up to a story that we covered before. Before we originally started the Non-Prophets, way back when, I and a couple of other people from Austin went over to Santa Fe, Texas, to protest at the Santa Fe High School that was doing the public broadcasts of prayers over the PA system before their football games. Everybody remembers that case, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, no, can't do that. Okay. Woman awarded $1 in school prayer case. This is from Houston. A federal judge awarded $1 in damages to a former student who had secured a restraining order so she could pray over a public address system before her high school's 1999 home football games. Judge Sim Lake ruled that former honors student Marion Ward was entitled to the nominal damage plus attorney's fees. Ward filed a lawsuit claiming that the school district in Santa Fe, Texas, violated her constitutional rights with a policy that would have kept her from praying over the public address system before games.
Boo-hoo.
When the U.S. Supreme Court found such prayers unconstitutional, Judge Lake ruled that Ward's case was moot. But her case landed back in court when Lake was asked to rule on what damages should be awarded. I don't really understand the basis on which she should get any damages at all.
I don't either. At the point, if the case is moot, then.
But apparently, she did get this. She did get this restraining order. Maybe the damages are from whoever issued the restraining order. I don't know.
Yeah.
But in any case, $1, an award of $1 from a judge means this. Right?
Means I have to give you something, but I'll be damned if I'm going to give any more than
Jeff
I
is making
accepted.
a gesture with his middle finger toward the microphone. Yeah, right. So that was amusing.
But
it's nice to see those people get smacked around some more.
Yeah, but they did order attorney's fees too, so the state's going to have to pay for her attorney for this frivolous, bullshit argument that she should be allowed to force people to listen to her pray.
Yeah, well, somehow she got that restraining order, right?
Yeah.
Who issues a restraining order? A judge?
Local judge, probably.
Well, so, it's that judge's fault. He should never have issued the restraining order in the first place.
As your wife likes to say, which I enjoy discussing with her, people seem to think that having the right to say something is equivalent to having the right to force other people to listen.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's just not.
Especially when it comes down to the prayer at schools.
Right.
We've got about 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
Can I just start a quick discussion on the project for a New American Century? Or
Please do. Please do.
I don't know how many...
We should have fit this in before when we were talking about the shenanigans of the Bush administration.
I would like to invite listeners to go to newamericancentury.org, where they can maybe get a clue as to what the real motivation for attacking Iraq was.
Right, because if you recall, we had this little discussion here just today, where first the Bush administration says, well, we got to attack Iraq because Iraq is in cahoots with the terrorists. And then it's, we got to attack Iraq because Iraq has got the weapons of mass destruction. And then it's, we got to attack Iraq because Iraq is being mean to its own people. And now it's, we attacked Iraq because we got this scheme by which we're going to foster democracy in the Middle East, and that's going to lead to peace. Yeah.
That's actually getting closer to the original reason that we were actually going to attack. Because, you see... it might surprise you to know that we didn't just plan to Iraq after we got attacked by Al-Qaeda on November 11th.
I think you just used Iraq as a verb.
What?
Which is interesting.
No, we didn't.
Didn't
I say attack Iraq?
No, you said Iraq.
We didn't plan to Iraq until...
We didn't plan to Iraq.
Yes, and I think the Bush administration may Iraq again.
They're probably already planning to Iraq as we speak.
Yeah. Right.
What do you think they'll Iraq next, Jordan? They say they won't.
No. Syria, maybe. Iran, maybe.
North Korea is actually threatened to use their nuclear weapons, right?
They got them, too.
So I wouldn't consider that in Iraq.
Yeah, I wouldn't either, but
that's legitimate.
We're talking about Bush here, so...
Okay.
Bush probably thinks...
He'll probably do it and then say, even though everybody knows that that North Korea has weapons of mass destruction, he'll probably say, it's to liberate the poor North Korean people.
Who, by the way, need liberating, but we shouldn't be doing it.
Okay, so when I suggest that you go to newamericancentury.org, I'm not just pointing you to some crazy liberal group that's making up stuff about the government. This is actually a site that is run by people in Bush's cabinet.
Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz.
Paul Wolfowitz, Deputy Defense Secretary. John Bolton, Undersecretary of State for Arms Control and International Security. Lots and lots of people. Just
those
look
are on
up
the board.
names.
But the people actually who are the driving forces behind this, and publicly so, are Rumsfeld, Pearl, Wolfowitz, the neocons who push so strongly for war.
Yeah, and what's real interesting is if you go to this site, you can find documents which were written before 2001. Like in 2000 and 1999.
September of 2000. In 1998, these people, before they actually formed this organization, these same people behind it, Wolfowitz, Rumsfeld, Pearl, and that Cheney, went to President Clinton at the time in 1998 and asked him to attack Iraq.
Right.
For this
but
very
it's not
reason.
just Iraq. Their documents specifically say that they should attack Iraq, Iran, and North Korea. Those names sound familiar.
The axis of evil.
Yeah, and they only became an axis of evil because it made such a nice soundbite after September 11th. But they were talking about attacking those three countries who mysteriously became the axis of evil before 9/11. Even though they had nothing to do with Afghanistan, a link was drawn between them.
While we were still giving millions of dollars to Afghanistan, this plan was in place.
Yeah, and I make no mistake here, these people could not be happier that an opportunity fell in their lap to actually implement their plan, which otherwise might have been relegated to the dustbin of history.
Can we please call that an excuse and not an opportunity? Because Iraq, none of these countries had anything to do with the terrorist attacks on us.
Right.
At least there was no evidence that any of these countries had anything to do with that. So it's not. I mean, if it was a real opportunity, I mean, if we had found that Saddam Hussein had been behind the September 11 attacks, I'd have said, "Yay! I support those troops. Let's go in there and kick their asses back." Right? Then we would have been attacked first. We'd have been retaliating for an attack
like we did in Afghanistan.
Yeah, the United Nations would have completely stood behind us.
Like they did in Afghanistan.
Like they did in Afghanistan.
That's right.
Anyway, just a little bit about the Project for a New American Century. This is from an article by Jay Bookman in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution on September 2nd of 2002. Where he points to this site and says, because they were still just private citizens in 2000, the authors of the project report could be more frank and less diplomatic than they were in drafting the national security strategy. Back in 2000, they clearly identified Iran, Iraq, and North Korea as primary short-term targets well before President Bush tagged them as the axis of evil. In their report, they criticized the fact that in war planning against North Korea and Iraq, past Pentagon war games, this is a direct quote, past Pentagon war games have given little or no consideration to the force requirements necessary not only to defeat an attack, but to remove these regimes from power. Now, when I first discovered this and discussed it with conservatives, they said, this is ridiculous. You're paranoid. We're not trying for world domination. You stupid lefty.
Pico.
Now that we've successfully attacked Iraq, I hear little comments creeping in like, so what if it is true? That's not such a bad thing.
Right. Well,
And another part of this is, I've read this whole document. It's 80 pages long.
You're a brave man.
Another part of this document is that they want to, basically, this isn't just for regional domination, this is for world. They want America to be the world dominant power. They say we're the only superpower left, and we should use that.
And we should stay that way.
We should stay that way, and we should do that by getting rid of potential superpowers when they're still little. And one of the tenets of this is we have to show that we're able to fight two wars in different places simultaneously and win them both overwhelmingly.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So somewhere down the line, if they get their way, we're going to be fighting two wars, maybe North Korea and Iran. At
Syria,
the same time,
it's easier.
Or Syria would be easier. At the same time, and then defeating them very quickly and very handily, like we did Iraq. Iraq is just the test case of this. Okay, this is the underlying theme for.
And I gotta say, don't think that I'm saying that Iraq, that Saddam Hussein was a great guy. I mean, he made me nervous too. But making us nervous should not be a legitimate reason to go and bomb the hell out of them, especially if you don't have any genuine plans to set up a government that will make you less nervous.
Yeah.
Like, say, a government of Shiite fundamentalist lunatics, which would be as bad as or worse than the Taliban.
Now, do you think the phrase smoking gun is an appropriate phrase to use in relation to this document? I mean, does this constitute proof that the war on Iraq was not about terrorism, was not about the Iraqi people, was not about stopping Saddam Hussein's evil antics, was not about fear of weapons of mass destruction. Was nothing but a step in the direction of the United States trying to take over the world.
Not yet. I think it will show as evidence, very strong evidence, if and when we attack Iraq or Iran or North Korea, or we attack two countries simultaneously, or do any of the other various things that are in this document. The problem is that Clinton came out a couple of weeks ago and said, look, we need to plan for the time when we're not the biggest army in the world. And everyone, jumped all over him about it, saying, how can you say that's unpatriotic? Well, there's going to be a time. Right. And I can tell you where it's going to be.
You can?
Yeah, China. Oh. China will have a bigger and more powerful military than us eventually. They have a thriving economy, and they have 1.5 billion people.
Well, that's very close to making a prediction about the future, which we don't like.
Which we don't do.
And we're on the
educated guess
of the program. Yeah, which we can do. We can do educated guesses. Thank you very much for listening. We will see you again in 2 weeks, or however long it takes between the time you're listening to this recorded show and the 24th of May, 24th of May,
24th,
from 2 to 3:30 on atheistnetwork.com.
At that Central Time.
Central Time. Thank you, Russell. And we will see you later. Bye-bye. We'll leave you with Sparks.